Hello, this is Sabrina from Inglés con Killian. I want to mention 5 areas of grammar and vocabulary today that would be really good to improve to make you sound better in English, to make your English sound better even. The 5 things that I want to mention are: number 1, questions; number 2, verbs; number 3, gerunds and infinitives; number 4, prepositions after verbs; and number 5, present perfect and the past, the difference between them. So number 1, questions. Questions and English can be difficult because the sentence structure is different than of a normal sentence, and we also use auxiliary verbs. So for example, in the present tense, you could have a question like, for an action verb, like where do you live? Or what do you do for a living, for example. So we have the auxiliary do, and then it changes for third person. Where does he live, for example? So that can be a little bit difficult. So you need to practice it a lot to be able to ask questions properly with the question word and the auxiliary, and later the rest of the question. So practice questions if you can. I'm going to do an exercise on that on its own actually, because it's quite useful. The next thing I want to review, or that I want to mention, are verbs. So in English we have a list of irregular verbs that you should learn: the present, the past and the participle, and we also have the regular verbs. I know people complain about having to learn the irregular verbs, but it's actually not that bad in English. You just need to learn the list, group them together for similar ones like blow, blew, blown, and throw, threw, thrown, for example, and try to learn those and see the pattern. You know, if you have blow with OW and you see another verb with OW, it's probably going to be the same kind of ending. For example, think, thought, thought, buy, bought, bought, things like that. So try to group them together. It makes it easier to learn, and be careful with the pronunciation of them as well, of course. But do try to learn them very, very well, because then you need them to change tenses for the passive, for reported speech, for your fluency, to be able to speak without stopping to think, what's the past, what's the participle. Try to learn the irregular verbs very, very well. And regular verbs as well, be careful with the pronunciation. If you have a regular verb that ends, the last consonant is a T or a D, then you have the extra syllable. For example, attracted in the past, or invited, for example. The last consonant there is T. So you have to put the extra syllable. But all of the other verbs, no extra syllable. It can be difficult to pronounce certain words. For example, ask in the past is asked. So yeah, it can be difficult to pronounce, but they're not extra syllables. It's all the same sound. So be careful with the pronunciation there. The next point then is gerunds and infinitives. So if you try to practice the gerunds and infinitives, your English will sound better, because people make a lot of mistakes with this. So some examples can be, there are many, many examples, obviously, but some examples could be, would you mind bringing me a coffee? Or would you mind sending me the report, using the ing. We use the infinitive here only in a different way. Would you mind if I sent you the report? Or would you mind if I called you? So then it's different, you know. So would you mind plus ing. With the verbs to finish and to start, it's always with ing. Finish working, start working, okay? Or actually with start, you can say start work, or start to work, or start working. But with finish, it's always with ing. For example, recommend and suggest, those verbs, if you're not using the subject, it's always with ing. I recommend doing this, or I suggested doing that. But then if you want to say, for example, I recommend that you, with infinitive, I recommend that you do this, or I suggest that you do that. So you have to be careful. With the verb want, for example, I want you to do that. I need you to do that. Be careful with the construction. And with the verb to stop. Stop smoking or stop doing that. Okay, so it's not stop to smoke, it's stop smoking. Okay, the next one I want to mention is the prepositions after the verbs. So sometimes they can be different from the prepositions that you use in your own language, or sometimes we don't have prepositions. So for example, I will contact you after this class. I will contact with you, no. We will discuss that in the next meeting. Discuss about that, no. Listen to, always with to. Look at, always with at. And this is related to, is with to, not with. So just study that, check Google, you will find lots and lots of websites that practice that, and your English will sound better for it. The last thing I want to mention is the difference between present perfect and past. I think it's because of the area that I live in here in Alicante in Spain. Present perfect is very common in Spanish. So then it translates into English. So maybe people say something like, last week I have been at the beach, but in English it's a simple past because it's finished. If the action is finished, it's simple past. Even for example, this morning, I had breakfast at 10 o'clock. It was one event, it was in the past, it's finished. I have had breakfast at 10 o'clock? No, I had breakfast. Okay, just some little points. If you need to know more, tell me in the comments below and I will find some links for you, or just check Google. So it's questions, review your questions, try to learn them well. Verbs, try to know your verbs inside out very, very well. And that way it will help you when you're speaking with your fluency, that you're not stopping and thinking. The gerunds and infinitives also help you to sound better. Prepositions after verbs, try to know which ones to use or not use, and the difference between present perfect and past. Hope that was helpful. If you want some additional information in relation to any of those, just let me know.